New episodes of the Birdie Golf Club podcast are out every single Tuesday. Make sure to follow, subscribe on whatever platform you're on to not miss an episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Birdie Golf Club podcast. As you can see around me, if you're watching, or hopefully you can hear in my tone, I'm a little bit more relaxed this week because I've changed the setup in the booth back to a bit more of the OG style. Just felt a little bit more comfortable, felt like I could have more relaxed conversations in this setup rather than the cramped setup where I was before. So I hope that translates to better quality for you all and better conversations as we go on. Thank you all for your support. As you continue to listen, I really do appreciate it. Numbers continue to increase, so thank you so much. Make sure you share with your family and friends, leave a review, and all that good stuff. This week on the podcast, we have Alex Huang on the podcast. Now, Alex is the COO, I believe, of DECADE Golf. Now, what Alex brings to DECADE is his ability to look at numbers and make sure that it all marries up. And he puts this in a far better way than what I have just then in the podcast by sharing his experiences of when he was involved with poker, how he met Scott Fawcett, and then how he became part of DECADE. The things that we talk about, I can attest to, genuinely will improve your golf game. So if you're listening and you're getting ready for 2026 and the golf season, you're playing a bit now in what is considered the off season, and you just want to bring down your handicap, better game management on the course, then the things that Alex talks about and the principles that he is applying genuinely do work. I shot my best round of golf ever playing these principles. So listen up, make sure you're ready to take some notes, digest some information, listen back if you need to get some clarity on things. And most of all, enjoy the episode with Alex today. I'm looking forward to having Scott on in a month or so's time and delving a little bit more into his history. But today is very DECADE focused, and I hope you do enjoy it. I hope it brings you better scores. And most of all, thank you so much for listening. I'll hand over to our interview with Alex Huang. And this was just as the news broke about Brooks returning to the PGA Tour. Opened my phone this evening to the Brooks news and everything like that. So I just recorded the intro to sort of tomorrow's episode, which is now going to have pretty much just me reading Brian Rolap's words and deciphering what's going on. I mean, pretty crazy development.
Yeah, I'll be curious how they handle. I mean, I think Brooks might, no insider knowledge or anything, but like Brooks kind of laid low.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't like the Brysons of the world who were at the forefront of the lawsuit, him and Phil. And I have to imagine that the tour is going to respond to that differently should they try to rejoin the tour.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm quite surprised that Brooks got back as quickly as he did. I thought they might have a blackout period for him. So
yeah, it looks like they've cleverly excluded Phil from the whole thing as well, because of the specific requirements are basically John Rahm, Bryson,
right,
Brooks, and Cam Smith. The rest of them.
So it's I don't know. We'll see. It's been, you forget how enjoyable it is to have those guys in the field.
Yeah.
Until the majors happen, and then you're like, oh yeah, like golf is just better when you've got Rahm in the moment and Bryson and all of that. So
absolutely, yeah. And it was interesting they included the players as well, because obviously it is elevated, but they've elevated it again by including it. So maybe Rolap's planning on a fifth major sort of talks, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for joining me. I was really glad Scott sort of connected us and got the ball rolling on this. I ask every guest pretty much the same question at the start of the episode, and that's, when was the first memory they have of picking up a golf club? I don't know if you have that memory.
So I didn't start playing golf. I started out playing baseball, then I kind of evolved from, it's funny, I played baseball and started to dislike baseball because it was a sport that you could have a good game and you would still
Hmm.
lose because you had teammates. So then I transitioned to tennis, and then I really enjoyed tennis, but then got frustrated because it was a sport that you kind of required a good opponent to have good rallies. And then I kind of moved on to golf. So I didn't really start golfing until I want to say it was my summer after my ninth grade year. So that's freshman year here in the
Hmm.
States. And I distinctly remember my first round of golf. I shot 90 on 9 holes. And the ninth hole at this course, which is our high school's home course, it was a forced carryover a pond. It was probably a shot of 100 yards or so, and I just remember rinsing ball after ball after ball in it, and shooting 90 on my first nine ever. And then I still managed. I mean, I improved and managed to make our junior varsity team that summer.
Hmm.
So I guess I came a long way, objectively speaking. But yeah, I don't have a vivid memory of the actual first time I
Hmm.
picked up a club. I just remember having you know, a set of clubs that were just a mishmash of a bunch of probably generic brands that I scrounged together at a garage sale or something, and then went out with some friends. Frankly, probably stole a bunch of golf balls from the local driving range, and then you know, fittingly deposited them all into the pond at number 9 at Homestead Golf Course.
I love that. I love that. So it was a bit of a later development for you because you were sort of multi-sports athlete before, really played plenty of sports growing up, which was probably pretty key in developing as a person that could adapt quickly to other sports. Right, that tends to be a theme that runs through a lot of people that I speak to when they've played multiple sports growing up. They have that adaptability to then kind of get what you need to do in the game of golf, and that was kind of right for you.
Yeah, yeah, it worked out. Just always been a relatively athletic person,
Mm.
and then, like I said, it was kind of like a natural transition because I had like the hand-eye coordination that I developed through baseball, and then obviously on TV, golf looked so easy. It's like this ball's not even moving. How hard can this be? And met some great friends that I still keep in touch with today. 30 years later. So definitely just something special about the game that really was magnetic for me
Mm.
and kept me interested in it through high school, and then obviously now I'm working in the industry. So
Yeah. So were you always looking at golf in this sort of analytical way when you came into it? You said obviously shooting 90 over 9 holes. Did you come away from that with the thought process of, okay, I'm probably not going to hit the ball amazingly better next time I go, so can I reduce the errors? Or was that like a slow burn that sort of led you to where you are now?
yeah, that's a great question. I think that, so I'm 40 years old, and when I was playing golf, we didn't have this access to the data, and we had ideas and theories behind certain things, right? And
Mm.
as a reference point, our golf team, we kept three stats when we played a match. Our coach wanted to know how many fairways we hit, how many greens we hit, how many putts we had.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, that's a step in the right direction, but we understand how antiquated and misguided a lot of those numbers are. And, at that time, we just didn't have the access to this information to understand. Obviously, strokes gained was transformative to how we look at golf.
Mm.
And kind of to your question of how I approached the game, so through high school, I'm of the age where sort of the poker boom happened, where ESPN invented the whole card cameras, where the World Series of Poker became just a staple on the television sets of all of me and my friends, and we would get together every weekend, bringing our piggy banks to play poker while we had rounders on TV or like the latest World Series of Poker episode on ESPN. And I've always had a knack and interest in puzzles,
Mhm.
and that's kind of what actually drew me to poker. And then when more of the data started coming out, that's actually how I would say became more interested in like the statistics side of golf and other sports, right? And we've seen that evolution now with, obviously Moneyball is very famous in
Mm.
baseball, and then we see sort of the adaptation of it in basketball, where it's like corner three, dunks, and layups. And then we talk about it now in football. You see all these like next gen stats where they're talking about everything from the speed at which the ball carriers moving to just talking about like separation scores and really looking at things from a more granular level, because at the end of the day, like all of these athletes and coaches and teams are looking for these fine edges. And then obviously golf is perfect for it, because golf just gives you as much data as you want, especially with like ShotLink on the PGA Tour. You're littered with, you can dive so deep and get lost in the woods with just looking at stat after stat after stat. And I think that's what really drew me in, is because one of my attractions to poker was that side of things.
Sure.
Where I worked in the poker space for 18 years, and we had the world's largest poker analytics software. And our company basically gave you as much data as you wanted on your poker game. And we sort of figured out how to take that data and use it to, for lack of a better term, to weaponize it to play against your opponents. And so you can figure out ways to exploit their tendencies, or identify situations where maybe they were underbluffed or suboptimally reacting to certain decision points in a poker hand. And like that was just kind of like a natural transition to a lot of what golf is, right? It's the poker and golf is actually two games that share a lot of commonalities, right? It's very largely driven on like probabilistic outcomes, but it's very much influenced by a whole lot of variance that I think even the average golfer doesn't quite appreciate, is just how much luck and variance there is in golf. And I think that, like, collectively they just share a lot of common themes. Now, obviously in golf, you've got the physical side of it. You've got the execution and the athletic side of it, where poker you don't. But they do have a lot of similarities, and I would say a lot of skill sets that I was able to kind of craft in my poker career, that I've been able to kind of leverage into helping the players I work with and helping to share insights as it relates to golf strategy.
It's fascinating. It really is, because, like you said, that Moneyball side of things that really sort of, I suppose, came out in the early 2000s. That sort of idea of turning sports into numbers, rather than the feelings or the emotions that go with it. So it made a huge impression on multiple different sports, and it does seem to have moved a little bit later into the golf space, with people, especially with when I look at the amateur level, because you see so many people that play other sports taking data into equations way more than what you see a regular amateur doing at a golf course. So that transition for you from poker to golf, although you look at it and go, where are the correlations? Now that you laid them out, you see them very, very, very clearly. When you maybe approach people and talk about this, what's the biggest kickbacks you find against the decade system, against sort of this analytical side? What's maybe the biggest sort of refutes that people give you when you talk about these sort of things?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is once again what you touched on with humans. We're just emotional creatures, right? And what that ends up leading us down is certain conclusions, or you know we have this ability to sort of overgeneralize little data points, right? So a great example is if you just think about your average golf broadcast on TV, right? We're looking at a very filtered version of the top 0.01% of golfers who are also that week playing at the top 0.1% level.
Yeah.
And when we see them hit every single one of their yardages precisely, and hit a disproportionate number of their approach shots close to the pin, our brains can easily tell ourselves that this is just how good golf is played. This is how PGA Tour players always play. And so the pushback is this idea of, so much of it just revolves around the idea of managing your expectations, right? And that's what kind of data has allowed us to better contextualize and quantify, because at the end of the day, to know, we watch TV and I see the top 10 guys of that given week all hitting their wedges inside an 8-foot circle.
Mm.
And then our minds tell us, hey, PGA Tour players do not hit a wedge outside 8 feet. When we have the numbers to back up the fact that no, from 100 yards, we know that like the average tour proximity is well beyond 8 feet.
Mm.
And not letting ourselves, and what that does is then you get the players who take that attitude and expectation onto the golf course, and they put this immense pressure on themselves where they're like, okay, I know PGA average is this, so I expect myself to perform at, not the exact level, but of some similar level.
Yeah.
And the idea of when I'm with my friends who are a 5 handicap or a 10 handicap, and they hit their wedge from 130 yards to 30 feet, and I see them slam their club or their shoulders slouch, it's just laughable to me, right? And I see it, it's so pervasive, especially in like junior golf, where you see, very much extremely highly skilled kids who are out there hitting sand wedge to 18 feet. And then I'm walking with the parent, and then the parent is like, gosh, like, I know he's better than that. And it's like, what do you think is like a realistic outcome of your player hitting it? Well, they should have hit that inside a 5-foot circle like every time. And being able to sort of almost provide them with the information to reshape or remold their expectations can sometimes be really helpful, because at the end of the day, like, the kid's trying his hardest, and sometimes these parents just put some extremely unattainable expectations on their kids. And if you're able to kind of show them like, listen, here's like the literal PGA Tour average or the LPGA average, and your kid, all due respect, is not near Nelly Corda's level or Scotty Scheffler's level, and yet the parent thinks that their kid's like median proximity from 50 yards is a tap in.
Yeah, yeah.
And just like having that sort of ability to support some of those thoughts nowadays is just really helpful, I find, especially as it relates to just working with kids and players to improve. Because without those numbers, then it just becomes like, oh, this crazy guy says that PGA Tour players hit a sand wedge outside 20 feet sometimes.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
But if you're able to kind of show them some tangible data, it's a little tougher to refute.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes complete sense. And I think that correlation between what you were talking about earlier with poker, with the guys sort of looking at it as a system where it's, okay, I'm going to lose some hands, but statistically I would have won that hand, 7, 8 times out of 10, but just this time I didn't. With that in mind, have you seen, when you've been teaching the Decade system, people's relationship with golf improve because they've sort of removed the, like you said, the expectation of perfect or the expectation of 5 feet to instead this other thing? So actually, even when they make a bad shot, bad, say it goes to 40 foot or whatever, or just miss the green, their relationship with golf is just far more static and far more comfortable because of it. Is that maybe something you found?
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. If I just reflect back on one of the LPGA girls I work with, her name's Kaylee McGinty, and she was an LPGA rookie this past year. And going into Q school, one of the struggles we have, and one of the first things I say to a lot of the tour players I work with is like, I need you guys to understand that while I understand you guys are all perfectionists, you cannot expect perfect. And you need to relinquish the sense that everyone else in the field is playing perfectly, right? And so, the great example is going into Q school. LPGA Q school is a 90-hole marathon, right? So over 5 days. And we kind of went in with a really, really nice strategy, and really centered around the idea that, like, despite the size of these greens, despite the ridges in these greens, we're going to focus on hitting more greens in regulation than any other girl in this field. However, we're also going to understand by doing this, and if we successfully execute, we'll probably 3-putt a few more times more than the rest of the girls, just given the nature of if we're hitting more greens, we're naturally going to be a bit farther from the hole. Our proximity is going to be a bit bigger. And just the law of averages are going to tell us that we're probably going to three putt a little more often than the others, but it's going to, over the 90 holes, it's going to net out better than those who are scrambling around and trying to get up and down. So we went into the first round saying like, okay, let's give ourselves almost like an allowance of, we're going to three putt 5 times this week. And that's just okay, because we're going to hit so many greens that it's going to outweigh the harm that those 5 three putts created. And I vividly remember on the second hole, so she makes like a 45, 50 footer on the very first hole. And on the second hole, hits it to probably 18, 21 feet, downhill, little slider, and just really misreads this putt and leaves herself like a 3 or 4 footer on her second putt and misses it. And rather than be upset, slam her bag or her putter with the 3 putt, it was like, okay, that's 1. I've got 4 more for the week.
Right.
And it was this complete change in mindset where, again, it's like, it's giving yourself the grace that you're human and that you're imperfect, right? And while they are all striving to play at the highest level, understanding that like this 90 hole slog is going to have its up and downs. But if we kind of go in with this mindset of just understanding like, it's okay if I do this, it eases this tension and this like naturally built instinct of being like, okay, I need to get back that horrible 3 putt I just made.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Another example is another girl that I worked with. She was prepping for her US Open qualifier. And she told me on a call, like, I need to make 12 to 14 birdies tomorrow to have a chance. 36 hole qualifier. And I told her, I said, listen, you go in and tell yourself, I'm going to make 3 bogeys and have my 1 3 putt. And I like your odds, right? There's no guarantee that you're going to make it out. But like, if you do that, you're going to make enough birdies that I like your chances if you can just kind of limit the mistakes. Sure enough, she goes in, makes exactly 3 bogeys and has 1 3 putt and is medalist.
Wow. Yeah.
And she's just like, I can't believe, it's a complete shift in mindset, because despite sort of controlling these little errors, she still fell into 8 or 9 birdies throughout the day, because guess what? When you're a good player, you still get to hit wedges, you still get to make mid-range putts, you still get to hit some shots close, and you still get to play par 5s.
Yeah. You're
going to fall into birdie, right? And having that acceptance of just understanding, like, I'm going to control what I can control. And, it's nobody's going to go through like a PGA Tour event. Very rarely is someone going through with 0 3 putts.
Yes. Yeah.
But understanding that, like, I'm going to try to 3 putt less than my competition. And I'm also going to give myself that like margin of error, understanding I'm allowed to hit some bad shots. I'm allowed to miss some greens. But if my strategy is good, I did all of the grunt work to be able to scramble and to be able to save par and hit those short game shots, so that, like, frankly, you should be playing a little more freely than anyone else, because you kind of understand how the formations of holes play out, and understanding that like you're going to miss greens and so are other people, and just having that appreciation of, guess what, golf is very, very hard, but so much of the game is really centered around like not letting your emotions override logic, and making sure that you kind of have a good game plan going in, so that you're able to, like, once again, control what you can, stay logical, and not let your emotions get the best of you, where all of a sudden you had a good target, but now you're trying to get back that bad 3 putt you just had. And then you compound this mistake into being short-sighted, trying to hit a hero flop shot, leaving it into a bunker, and the next thing you know, you blink and make double.
Yeah. It's like
And,
you've been watching
we
me,
all fall-
Alex.
Yeah, I mean, we're all guilty of that, right? Because we want to shoot our best scores, but we end up just falling into this trap where we think we can pull off perfect, right? And obviously, like, the tour players, their skill level is better than ours, but at the same time, they still are human and they're still emotional, and they're like just extremely, extremely. You can get tunnel visioned into this idea of like, I need to get back everything on this one hole instead of staying patient and just kind of letting the chips fall, right? And that's like I said, just a trap that I see a lot of players fall into, where they're trying to get back everything in one shot in one swing.
Yes.
And usually that doesn't end well.
ShotScope is the tool that you don't have in your bag yet, and the one that you need. Whether you like wearing a watch on the course, whether you like using rangefinders, whether you just like having the tags on your clubs to know your distances, ShotScope gives you all of that. Before using ShotScope, I was unaware of the best parts of my game and the worst parts of my game, but using their watch and their rangefinder has enabled me to work out where I need to improve, using shots gained data to accurately see where I can improve. And I want that for you too. So if you use the code Birdie Golf Club on the ShotScope website, that will get you 15% off the entire range. So make sure to head to the checkout, put in whatever ShotScope product you want, enter code Birdie Golf Club, and you will get yourself 15% off. It helps support the podcast and can help improve your game. Yeah, so that must be the sort of execution over expectation sort of dilemma, right? That maybe, as you were saying, so would it be better for most people, because I've never thought about it this way before, of going out and, like you just said, giving yourself, okay, I'm going to make, I'm playing off 10 currently. I don't know what the statistics are for 3 putts, but
yeah,
probably pretty high, right? And yet I go out time after time, and I'm sure everyone probably does this, and goes, no 3 putts today. That's going to be where I make the difference. What would you say to that? At my level, that's insane, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would be like, I'm rooting for you, but I certainly don't like your odds, right? Especially if you're planning on hitting some greens.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you just think about it, like, once again, the more greens you hit, the more opportunities you are likely to 3-putt. And when you're looking at the best putters on tour, like, if you look at a lot of the putting statistics, they're inversely correlated with greens and regulation success for a reason, right? And I always say, it's like, well, they better be converting their disproportionate number of those like 4 to 8 foot putts, because if not, they're off the tour next year.
Yeah.
Right? But you can't reasonably expect someone who hits 18 greens to all of a sudden start gaining 3 or 4 shots with the putter, because in order for them to do that, they'd have to be making a large number of putts from beyond 15 feet, which is, again, just like statistically unlikely.
Yes.
And like, just like a quick little tangent story, one player I was working with, she was so obsessed with her stats, right? And like, believe me, I'm a big proponent for stats, but I think that a lot of people just misapply how to kind of utilize them. So she's got the 4 categories. You've got your strokes gained off the tee, approach, around the green, putting. And she's just like, Alex, whatever I do, I cannot get my strokes gained putting positive. And I said, listen, if you want your strokes gained positive, I need you to start missing a few more greens, because you're not going to go around hitting 15, 16 greens around in college and be strokes gained positive unless you're shooting 64 every time.
Right.
And then she like didn't quite understand it. And I kind of explained how the correlation and the relationship between these stats, and like her college coach had never quite explained or made sure she understood how it's like, the more greens you hit, you're just naturally not going to get to make that many putts unless you just have one of your lucky days where you're, stuffing a lot of shots closely, because otherwise it's like all of your putts are going to be from 20 to 40 feet. Good luck making enough of those to outweigh, like, you're just pretty much going to be constantly lagging it up there, losing some micro fractions of a stroke. And then in aggregate, you might make a couple mid-range putts and you're like close to strokes gained neutral.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So how much would you say that really, when it comes to Decade as well specifically, how much is it? Because I think when people view course management, they have kind of like a very sort of tunnel vision view of what that is. And I fall into the trap of this as well, of like looking at the course we're playing tomorrow, say, and going, right, this is how I'm going to play this, and this hole, and literally plotting it out, sort of word, like trying to do it exactly how I would ideally play it. I would say for a lot of golfers, that's how they view course management pre-round, say. But how much would you say, actually, from what we've been speaking about here, how much emotional control comes into course management over anything that's plotted out on a yardage book or anything like that.
Uh-huh.
Would you say that there's probably
Yeah, I
more
mean,
emotional control being part of it?
I don't know, because like for every LPGA player I work with, every Epson Tour player I work with, I make them a strategy packet
Right.
using satellite imagery. And there is like this, in an ideal world, this is where our tee shot is. And then they send me the pin sheets and I literally dot every single one of them and
Wow.
say, like, this is pretty much your target for a perfect tee shot.
Mm-hmm.
But that's with the caveat that, like, subject to change.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And so much of that is, I like having those materials and providing them to my players, and I think they would agree. It streamlines the process, right? When we're on the golf course, especially in those high pressure environments like them, we can quickly become unraveled. And by having these, I say they're just basically guardrails, right? It's kind of like bowling with bumpers in a sense, where I'm making sure that when they see their pin sheet with my dot on it, that this is kind of the target. Let's say it's 4 yards to the right of the actual hole. They know in their minds that, like, my target should never ever be more aggressive than this.
Right.
And basically, they are looking for reasons to probably be even more conservative than what I have drawn up.
Sure.
And that could come in many different forms, right? It could come in your between yardages, between clubs. So naturally, you're going to be making a swing that you're a little less comfortable with. And as a result, your dispersion is going to be slightly more amplified. And thus, you need to kind of just be a little more conservative with your target. They could be coming from the rough. They could be coming from a worse angle. They could be, it could be windy, right? All of these variables are kind of going to be modifiers that are applied on top of my generic dot that I've provided. But at the same time, I think it's helpful because when they get these dots, they have kind of a guideline, a framework to build off of. And that can be very, very important, especially when you're dealing with, let's just use that last example. You just made a bad 3-putt on the last hole. You've got wedge in your hand, and all you can think is, like, I'm going to stuff this, I'm going to get birdie, and I'm going to be even from the bad 3-putt I just made. But maybe on my pin dot, the target is actually 4 yards off to the right because we're protecting against a water hazard on the left. And this serves as like a reminder of, hey, let's snap out of this emotional state of mind and let's get back to the present. Let's remember why this dot is not directly on top of the flag. And let's hopefully, harness back the aggression a little bit and make sure that we're making some logical decisions instead of, oh, I've got wedge in my hand. All I see is a green light and I can't even process or fathom the outcome of not hitting this wedge perfectly.
Yes.
And the next thing they know, they're rinsing in the water, they make double bogey, and now they're 3 over par.
Yeah. Yeah. You start saying the course has taken this shot from me, and all those sort of words.
That's so there is this blend of, like, the emotional intelligence and, I always say there's like the hard skills and the soft skills in golf, right? And like the hard skills are obviously like being able to control your club face and having swing speed and the mechanics down. But then the soft skills are also the ability to sort of understand, are you hitting it well today, right? If not, how does that impact your predictability of your shot or your dispersion? Obviously, like, every lie is different, right? And I think that's another one that's very underrated is we're all used to hitting balls on a perfectly flat driving range, but we very rarely encounter that type of a lie on the course. But yet a lot of us don't make those little adjustments to accommodate the possibility that the ball is slightly below my feet. Now my shot's going to leak a little more right and my contact's going to be a little worse and my ball's not going to carry as far.
Yeah.
So therefore I should be shifting my shot pattern slightly deeper into the green to account for that. And like those are like the soft skills in golf that I think a lot of players overlook. The same as, judging wind, understanding, just once again, like that mental awareness of expectations and seeing that big picture, right? So overall, it is that perfect blend of, while we don't want to be emotional creatures, there is like this inevitable emotional side of it that you need to always be, have that presence of mind on.
Yeah, absolutely. Over here at the moment as well, we've got just range mats. That's like you're just hitting off range mats the whole time. And every single one of my friends that has taken up the game recently, I'm like, yeah, just don't take it too seriously how you hit the ball today on that, right? Because if you want to see slow motion footage of what actually happens when you chunk one at the range, so it's all those things, isn't it? It's like carrying over to the golf course and knowing where your weaknesses are, but keeping everything in check, which makes sense. So that was all awesome, Alex. I wondered how long before we mention him, but I thought we should probably bring up when did you and Scott get together, and how did I don't want to call it a relationship, but a working relationship. When did that sort of begin, and how did that come about? That was one of the listener questions actually for this episode of
Yeah. So I mentioned the poker training business we had. So Scott was playing online poker when he was on the mini tours, and he was a member at our site. So he was a paying member, and just we had a golf forum, and he and I naturally bonded in that golf forum. And at that time, the advent of golf data hadn't quite come out, but between that and then there was another large forum called 2plus2 that had a big golf forum, and there was a big debate talking about like is drive for show, putt for dough true? And Scott had like his thoughts on that, and
that
some
surprises
other
me.
we
I
basically
thought Scott would be
kind of like
quietly
divided
just sitting
into
there.
one camp that it's like all about driving, and then one camp was all about putting.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like me and Scott's first interaction.
Right.
And then Scott built Decade kind of similarly off of our platform, right? So our poker analytics software, a quick explanation of what it did. When you play a hand of online poker, you get a textual hand history. And our software would take that hand history and parse it down into stats and display it as a HUD on your opponent's name, so that you could make the proper counter strategies and once again understand where they may be situations where you could exploit your opponents. So in poker, every decision point, pre-flop, flop, river, right? You're trying to gain micro cents or micro dollars. And then in the aggregate, you want that in the end to lead to profit.
Strokes
Golf
gained.
is kind of the same way, right? Where it's like every shot, you're ideally trying to gain micro strokes on every shot you hit. And then in the aggregate, by the end of 18 holes, 72 holes, you've hopefully gained a lot of shots on the field. And so there is this like natural, once again, like parallel between these two activities, because golf, it's a series of shots. Poker, it's a series of decisions that you're just trying to like gain a fraction of a stroke here, a fraction of a dollar here. And then after you've played 1,000 poker hands or 72 holes of golf, hopefully you've now gained 5, 6, 7 shots, $500, $600, $700, whatever it is. So Scott and I, both are numbers guys. So I think we just sort of gelled in that way, where it was just a nice, natural, mutual interest between us. And then I was helping some local kids in the area with just analytics, prepping for tournaments, stuff like that for fun. And then Scott asked me to join him in a more formal capacity a few years ago, where I was kind of taking over a lot of the college stuff, and stepped in for Chris Zambri, who was previously in my role, who's now the head of the U.S. development team.
Right. And what part of that role do you enjoy the most at Decade? What's your, when you wake up in the morning and see your schedule and go, yes, yeah, this is great. What's that for you?
Yeah, I think the most surprisingly to me, because I've never been one much to like really coach, but there's such a sense of joy when my students and the teams I work with experience success. And there's certainly like a selfish side of it, right? Because I like feeling as if I played a role in their performance. But there's a thrill in being able to just like load up college leaderboards and just have, every event having somebody to follow, someone to root for, every amateur tournament having a dozen or so names of players that I work with, and being like, okay, that's like, okay, I remember when I did some of the course preparation that like, just looking at the satellite imagery, I suspected hole number 12 was going to be hard. Let's go see how he did on number 12. Oh, sweet. Okay, they parred it. They played it 2 under as a team, and the rest of the field has played it at 6 over. Like, those are the little dopamine hits that I really, really love, because it's like we paid special attention to this for a reason, right? It might just be like, this is not a driver off the tee for reasons. And then hearing that, oh, every other team sent driver on this hole. but we didn't, and then we ended up going bogey free on it. And like those, like I said, are kind of the dopamine hits that I've really enjoyed. And I've been lucky that a lot of the teams that I work with closely have had some pretty cool accomplishments. And like I said, just feeling like you played a role in that,
Yeah.
and helping players to qualify for ANWA or qualify for NCAA nationals, getting their tour cards, getting some professional wins, like all of that stuff is just really, really cool, because I always say, like, the stuff that I do, I want to be additive to the great things that the players are already doing, right? Like every player I work with has already done so much, and there's a certain level of trust for them to let me in to their kind of inner circle to, like I say, hopefully elevate their game, whether that be 5%, 10%, and just present some new ideas, because they're all such good natural filters of information and understanding what kind of works for them and what doesn't. And sometimes it can be transformative with their general strategy, and they get this light bulb moment that it just makes them think of the game in a completely different way. But every single one of them is just so technically sound, right? They've all got that, like, those physical gifts that, you go to any college event and you just watch the kids hit balls on the range. You're not going to find many that aren't striping it.
Yeah.
Right? Like you would think every single one of them is tour bound. And often, like, what separates them is not what they can do with their A game, because all of them have tremendously high upside A games. It's what they do when they have their B and C game that differentiate them, because inevitably they're going to face turbulence in the course of a 54 hole tournament, and it's how they kind of persevere through that, right? And it's the same at the PGA Tour level. You see that with Scotty, you see that with Tiger. Their consistency, their ability to just, Tiger's made cut streak, right? Just a testament to his grit, his ability to, like, patchwork things when he doesn't quite have it and get to the finish line and do it better than his fellow competitors. And that's the same way all the way down to junior golf, right? We're not going to have our best stuff every day, but when, like, your B game is playing at a similar level to your opponent's A minus game, and then eventually that's going to degrade for them down to their B or C game, that's what winners are made of. And like, a lot of that is kind of predicated on having good strategy, that emotional intelligence, staying level headed, and not pressing bad circumstances into catastrophic circumstances.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I can't remember who said it, but it was like the 72s and the 73s are what gonna, over a course of your career, they're the ones that are actually going to win you tournaments down the line, because it's just grinding out that level par day when you just don't have it, like you were saying.
Yeah, every kid that's playing at a good sized program in golf can go out and shoot 65, 64, right? They all have that in them. But it's the ones that, like you said, their B or C game, like, their floor is 1 over par, and then everything else is, like, if your worst score is going to be 1 or 2 over par, like, you've got, like, a career ahead of you.
Yeah, exactly. Your bad really isn't that bad, which is
Right.
pretty impressive. Obviously, we're going into an era of, like, technology and how it's difficult to even know where it's going, really, because it just seems to change every single day. With the advent of sort of AI and everything like that, has that impacted your work at all?
I actually have found AI and stuff to be extremely helpful. I don't have, like, a programming background, so being able to use certain engines to help me code certain things and just generate databases and stuff can be quite helpful.
Yeah.
It's funny you say solvers, because that's very prevalent in poker, where they've got, like, perfect solutions now where you can literally, it'll tell you exactly what frequency you should be doing things on every single permutation of cards and
Wow.
flops and all this stuff. And like, I think what's different is that you've got that athletic side of golf, right? Like poker, it's just anybody can memorize a chart and make good decisions. But golf, you still have that execution side of things.
Yes. Yeah.
And so for me personally, I've found AI to be an asset. Now, obviously, things are changing every day, but it's really cool, a lot of the technology that golf has developed in even, like, the last 3 to 5 years, right? You've got awesome platforms to just help with stat tracking, with formulating game plans on golf courses. And then obviously, like I said, if you're able to sort of leverage some of this stuff into some data analytics and whatever, it can be a really powerful tool.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was talking to David Hunter, who's founder of ShotScope, and he was
Mm-hmm.
saying, that he looks at AI and yeah, it does some amazing things. He's like, it certainly makes certain processes faster, a bit like what you were saying. But when I asked him about when it comes into golf, where do you see it going? Is it going to be AI caddies and things like that? He sort of stepped back from that and just sort of said, I just don't foresee a time when, like you were saying, kind of that execution part can be taken over by anything other than the human with the golf club in his hands. And he viewed it that
Mm-hmm.
with AI's development, that basically it will just be an additive to the systems that are already in place that are there. So he's like, if we can utilize AI to make certain products better, to put in the hands of the golfer, then that's great. He's like, but I'm not here to
Mm-hmm.
replace coaches with, AI things and things like that. He's like, I just don't think that would ever happen. And I guess in a similar way with Decade, like we were saying, that emotional side of things, he's always maybe going to need that human input to kind of get to that point where people kind of get it right. And that the caddy side of things maybe would be interesting for something like
Mm-hmm.
Decade, but do you foresee it ever going to that kind of place where it would work? I'm cold, you're cold. Winter golf is very much here. So let's dream of a better place. Or even better than dream, let's go to a better place. If you use code Birdie Double Points at Golf Escapes, it will get you double escape points on your next trip. And you can book a trip, be away in the sunshine, enjoying the beautiful weather, the fantastic golf and beautiful amenities of some of their incredible hotels that they have listed. Golf Escapes will handle the whole thing. They'll set the entire package up and you can enjoy every single moment without a worry. I used Golf Escapes to book my trip to East Sussex National recently for just a brief break, and everything was handled perfectly, to my golfing for the weekend, to my wife enjoying a beautiful spa treatment whilst I was out on course. Peace of mind, just a fantastic experience and a great team over at Golf Escapes. Head over there now, use code Birdie Double Points to get yourself double escape points on your next trip.
Yeah, probably. I mean, at some point, a lot of golf is like geometry and
Sure,
physics, right?
yeah.
Like you've got your shot patterns and all of this stuff where you can kind of come up with a lot of heuristics to kind of get you most of the way there. But like to your point, there is an element where players just have a certain feel that you can't quite quantify
Mm,
and plug into an algorithm. And like I don't know how AI would ever kind of bridge that gap,
mm,
so to speak, or fill that void. Because how am I, as a robot that has like pure logic and no emotion, to quantify a player who's feeling nervous, or maybe they're feeling slightly under the weather, so their swing speed is down a little bit, or maybe they, just maybe something about the shot just doesn't quite fit their eye because the way that this building is framing the pin and the way the wind is blowing is drawing out their contact. I don't know,
yeah.
but there's just a lot of variables that you can't quite just quantify with a certain number or formula
Mm,
in golf, where once again the player might just feel a little uneasy or
mm.
extra confident over a shot, and like that type of stuff I think will hopefully keep things to be a little bit more on the artistic athletic side instead of everything just being a calculus.
Yeah, I think that's to bring it back to that robotic point. I think that's one of the biggest sort of kickbacks maybe I see just from the outside looking in that people say about Decade. And I know Scott's probably spoke. I think he spoke about this a little bit on the podcast before. Of it's difficult for him to answer sometimes because he's like, yeah, I suppose technically speaking, a robot
Mhm.
would perform really well using the Decade system essentially, but it's not
Yeah.
what Decade's asking for people to be, is it? To be robotic.
No. Yeah, I mean, again, Decade is just helping create a system so that we can kind of like temper our emotions a bit,
Mm,
right? And making sure we're on the right path to picking a good target and using some form of logic and logical deduction to ultimately arrive to that place where now it's about execution and performance. And like, there's nothing worse, as we know, standing over a golf shot and being uncertain if the target you're picking is correct. And having a system like Decade tell you, like, okay, we know the target is 2 yards left of this flagstick. And then from there on, it's on the player to kind of show us their superpower, right? Like, that's what they're very good at, which is getting the ball a certain distance in a general certain direction. And now it's on them to show us why you've hit hundreds and thousands of range balls and gone through hundreds and thousands of hours of lessons, because this is your time to showcase your skills. But there's nothing worse than standing on a tee box and wondering, do I have 65 yards of width here to send driver?
Sure.
Or is the proper play actually to be laying up with an iron? Right? And having that like 10 to 20% more confidence to hit the right shot, as you know, as a golfer, like that sometimes is everything. And that elevates performance, that elevates everything. And that's what Decade is really meant to do, right? It's supposed to help streamline that process and give you that affirmation that the target you're picking isn't too aggressive. It isn't too conservative. It's actually like the mathematically correct play. And now it's on you to show up and perform.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's people generally play their best at their home course, right? Because they know every little bit of it. They know kind of where to the misses are and where you cannot hit it, and they'll generally play their best golf there. But then they move away from their home course, and that's when you see that, like you said, that indecision and that, oh, what do I hit off this tee? I don't know what's there. I don't know what's here. If you can have something in place which kind of makes every course feel a little bit more like your home track, that's just going to be a huge win, isn't it, for most golfers, especially the golfers that you're dealing with at that kind of elite sort of level as well. What would you say was like the biggest success story that you've had as far as a golfer that you've taught? You might have already covered it with some of the golfers that we've mentioned, but...
Yeah, just real quick to touch on what you said, I actually just posted on Instagram last week. I did a study looking at do host teams. So for those who may not know, in the US, the majority of collegiate events are hosted by one school. And sometimes those courses are a neutral site. Other times they're like the literal home course for the course. So it might be like the course that is on the university campus. And that's like a course that the home course and its players would have a huge advantage on because they know every nook and cranny of the course and every blade of grass. So I did this study just out of curiosity on whether host teams have a performance advantage when it comes to score. And the results were crazy. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but it was something like if you took the strokes gained average for programs when they were playing on their home course for a tournament versus the rest of the season, they had like 100% increase in their strokes gained when playing on their home course relative to the field. And basically, if you think about in the college sense, your typical cadence is you travel, you show up to the course, you get one practice round where you're with your 4 other teammates and you maybe get to hit 2 shots on every hole, and you get one loop around the track. So if you think you're a freshman or new to the program, you get to see this course one time and then you're going out and playing 54 holes of competition on it. That is a very daunting task because just think of, there's only so much daylight. There's only so much time for you to assess and download every little detail about the course. And then you're going out and playing against somebody who's played this course 100 times. Right. And like what we were just saying, like there's this relief when you know exactly, okay, I can't see what's behind that green, but if I know that it's just fine, there's a relief for the player that's played there before versus the other that's like, it looks okay, but I'm not entirely certain. And that's going to trickle down into a less committed swing. So like all of that stuff is just pretty fascinating, especially like I said, when you can quantify it to be like, yes, home courses or host teams playing on a home course have a huge advantage. Sorry, side tangent.
Unless it's Bethpage Black, and then it's
unless touche. That's some
sorry,
Alex.
There.
Sorry. But to your question about like kind of biggest triumphs, I guess in golf, number one sticks out to me still is caddying for Kaylee McGinty at LPGA finals, right? That was just really cool because her and I had only started working together in July. So this was July 24, started working together, and she was headed to stage 1 pretty shortly after. And then I ended up going out caddying for her at stage 1. She got through it. Stage 2, I was planning to caddy for her, but the hurricane threw off the scheduling and the event got postponed and I wasn't able to make it. She proceeds to make a 30-foot putt on a 3% slope on her very final hole to get in on the number, makes it to stage 3, get down to stage 3, and more or less got through pretty stress-free. And it was just a very nice, kind of like a nice validation to everything we had been working towards in such short time. I've had several players that I work with that have qualified for US AMs, US Women's Opens, US Open Finals, stuff like that. So again, all of that stuff is just immensely rewarding, especially when it comes to you see that you talk to the player afterwards and they're like, I didn't have near my best stuff and it was still enough because I went in with the right mindset and the right strategy. And like, yes, it's great when your player goes out there and has their A game for an entire week and is like really buttoned up. But that's just not as cool,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's like all of these high performing athletes are going to have their peak performances, and their peak performances are going to be outrageously good. But it's when they're like, I didn't even hit the ball well, and I still hit 33 greens and qualified for the US Women's Open. Like, that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Because then you feel like all of the boring minutia that you've gone through with them on Zoom calls, talking about shot dispersions and going through their data where they're probably falling asleep. You kind of like made an impact,
Sure.
right? And then you know that played a role in their ability to sort of take that B+ game that normally would have shot 74 and they turned it into a 71. And then they were able to parlay that into the next day. They played a bit better and shot 68. And then now they place top 10 in a tournament that otherwise they probably would be struggling to make the cut 6 months ago.
Right.
And I think those are just really, really rewarding because again, like there is such a challenge when you're dealing with players that have all had such individual success and getting them to sort of reshape the way that they approach the game. And specifically telling them like you need to be more conservative with your targets is not always a great selling point because they start worrying about like, okay, well, if I'm aiming away from flags, I'm not making any more birdies, and getting them to entrust you to give them good guidance and that you're not leading them astray is tough, right? And sometimes it's that light bulb moment where they need to have that day on the course where they're playing their C game, and then they get off the course and they shot 2 under par, and they're like, I played horribly today. And those are like the moments that now they're all in because they've had that aha moment where it's like, okay, now I get it. Everything has crystallized, and now I'm all in.
Essentially, you've taken their low points and just elevated it up a bit, right? So it's never going to be quite as low.
I always tell them, like, I will not teach you how to shoot 64 or 63. You're going to do that because you're good, right? But hopefully what I can do is I can take your 75s and 74s and turn them into 71s and 72s so that when you shoot your 63s, 64s, you're not going from 50th place to 20th place, but you're going from 20th place to first.
Yes, yeah.
Right? I always call it like leaderboard loitering, right? I want my players to kind of like loiter around on the leaderboard, just plod along, and then eventually the stars are going to align a little bit, their putts are going to start dropping, and then now they're just going to propel themselves from that like 25th position up to the top 3.
Yes, yeah.
Right? Instead of, oh, I shot 63 to make the cut.
Right. Yeah. Scrambling just to try and make it work is kind of not what you want to see in like many ways. So, after I last spoke with Scott, I sort of implemented myself some of the sort of decade sort of principles, essentially, sort of the Tiger 5 stuff and everything like that. And I went and played, like I went away on holiday and played golf course. Like I played it a few times over and over again, and I just tried to implement. I hope I'm remembering rightly. I'm not putting words in his mouth, but he said something basically to the point of that I am very pointedly at me as well. Was that you are not good enough a golfer to basically start aiming at pins. That's kind of like what he said, and I took that very much to heart. I was fine. I was okay. I smiled through it, but I when I went on this trip, I basically aimed at the fat of the green Like, no matter what, I didn't even look at pins. I aimed at the fat of the green. And to be honest, anything up to 15 yards off the green, I continued just to look at where that flat portion of the green was in relation to the flag and aimed for that. And like, I told all my friends that weekend, I played the best golf of my life that weekend. I haven't been able to continue that because then you get emotional. That's what seems to have happened since. But I broke, I was somebody that couldn't break 80 before, and I shot, I think first round we played alternate shot, and I shot 79, and it was me and a 15 handicapper did an alt shot 79, and then shot 78 off my own ball the next day. And it was just like, I didn't play particularly well. I didn't think I was having the best ball striking, but my decision making was so much better because it wasn't purely based on emotion, which is kind of exactly what we've been talking about in this, isn't it? Really, just that idea of just realize your expectation management was certainly there. I don't know if I was beaten down a little bit by Scott for my expectations, but it worked. So I would recommend that to as many golfers as I possibly can.
Yeah, we are not going to all of a sudden start gaining 20 miles an hour of swing speed overnight, right? But what we can do is we can eliminate the stupid mistakes, right? And so, like, of course, the Tiger 5 is just a great barometer to measure that. But understanding, one of the guys I work with from my club, he was down in Florida for the winter and was about a 12 handicap. And all we did was just reshape some of his decision making on the course, right? Same thing. He was like, I've got wedge in my hand. This is a birdie hole. And it's like, no, I don't want at your level. It was like, at your level, I want you to think of it not as a birdie hole, but as a never make a bogey hole.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Can you successfully do that? And at first, there was a lot of pushback, but then it was like, okay, just prove. If you think you're so good to treat this as a birdie hole, prove to me you're so good that you can never bogey this hole.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's this logically, like, that should make sense. If you're good enough to make a birdie here, then prove to me you're good enough to never make a bogey here. And what we ended up doing is we created some drills and some practice plans. And long story short, in 3 months, he went from like 13, 14 handicap down to a 5.
Wow.
Without getting faster, without really getting better, but hit more greens, got rid of like the stupid doubles and triples, and just got a little bit more logical on the golf course with regards to those types of things. And I think what he realized most was, despite picking more conservative targets, he didn't stop making birdies. Right? Like, his birdie rate actually went up because he had more opportunities to make mid long range putts or hit approach shots that happen to be close to the hole.
Yeah.
Rather than now, all of a sudden, he's short sighted and he needs to do his best to get down with nothing worse than bogey. And so, to your point about like just creating this system where you're mitigating the unforced errors, right? That's really what the Tiger 5 are. They're just stupid mistakes. Because at the end of the day, golf has shots that are hard, right? If it's a long par 3 that's 180 plus yards and we're all hitting a 6 or 5 iron into it, a lot of us are going to make bogey. It's just a hard hole. Making a bogey there is not the end of the world. But if now we've got a flip wedge in our hand and we see this front pin and we get so enamored with trying to stuff it close that we short side it, plug it in a bunker, pitch it out, and make bogey, those are the little like ways we shoot ourselves in the foot. And by the end of the round, those are the holes in the shots that when someone asks, how did you play today? You look back and you're almost embarrassed to recount it, because once you take ourselves away from the course, we all have this, regardless your handicap, you realize what a dumb mistake it was. Yeah. Oh yeah, I had a 15-footer that I tried to jam in. I ran it by 5 feet and then I missed the comebacker. Yeah. And then I 3-putted. What a stupid 3-putt.
Yeah.
Right. And it's those shots that jump out to us that usually are the function or the product of being a little sloppy with our strategy and our mindset. Yeah. Right. Because we're pressing, because we're trying to do too much. And like, I made bogey with a 5 iron off a tee on a par 3. Big deal. Like, who isn't going to do that a good percentage of the time? It's those unforced errors that are really, really critical. And it sounds so simple and basic in this environment, like, on a call together. But when you're on the golf course, just think about the number of these dumb mistakes that you make. And if you can cut them in half, those are just strokes saved without any effort, without getting stronger, without getting fitter or having a better golf swing. It's just being a little bit more mindful with your putting speed or being a little bit better with your target construction when you've got a wedge in your
Mm.
hand. And once again, it's like we're all trying to shoot our best scores. And those are just such low hanging fruit for us to be able to clean up with very, very little effort and a little extra awareness.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there are so many topics we could go into, Alex, on this, isn't there? It's just non-stop, and perhaps we can do this again at some point, because we haven't even touched putting, and all those sort of type of things, especially distance in relation to hole that you're looking to try and get to. But I want to ask you sort of one final question before we finish
Yeah.
up. What are you most looking forward to in 2026? What's the things that, as with Decade and personally yourself as well, maybe on the golf course, those things that you're really looking forward to in this upcoming year?
Yeah, I think on the decade front, I have some. I think Scott and I have some really fun video series coming out
Cool.
on decade in the upcoming months. That we largely a lot of the stuff that we have on decade is more long form
Hmm.
content, so in the form of webinars, podcasts, and stuff. And we're really trying to call it modernize a bit, right? And we understand short form content, attention spans are short
3
nowadays.
seconds,
So
is
we
it?
kind of want to be a little bit more like more focused content that's driven towards helping players of all skill levels. You know, I've got 5 minutes on the bus on my way to work. I'm gonna load up a decade video and just give myself something to think about,
Cool.
right? And having some more content that's geared towards like practice plans and drills, because we understand that like part of golf is you need to work at it, but time is very finite and
Hmm.
not all of us have the luxury of having 3 hours a day to practice. And so coming up with some really fun drills, specifically I love gamifying practice where you're
Hmm.
able to keep score and kind of quantify your progress. So we have some of those videos coming out here soon. And I think like all of that's going to just lead to some new energy with regards to like both Scott and I, as well as our viewers and members, to shooting better scores, right? Because ultimately that's the name of the game. We all are in love with this crazy game of golf, and there's something about it that, like I said, is so magnetic
Mm.
and intoxicating, but at the same time, it's so
Yeah.
infuriating. And and like it's that perfect blend of never being able to play perfectly,
Yeah.
but always having that one or two moments where you can remember how that shot felt
Yeah.
or how you just like pulled off that shot exactly as you planned. And like those are, like I said, the intoxicating moments in golf that really keep you coming back. And for me personally, I don't take my golf too seriously. I have a great group of guys that I play golf with, and then a really fun money game. And the span of handicaps, everything from like a +1 all the way up to like a 20.
Hmm.
But we have some pretty chaotic games. Like I was telling Scott the other day, we a few times a year we'll get 10 guys and we'll play. We play primarily in fivesomes, but we'll get 10 guys, so we'll play 5 balls of alt shot, and then we play wolf scoring with Vegas. So wolf teams
Right.
with Vegas scoring,
Right.
but it's 10 people, 5 balls in play, so half the guys are not physically hitting a shot and just heckling, but you've got carts just going around the course and you're playing alt shot, picking partners like Wolf.
Yeah.
And it's just a blast because you've got, and once again, you've got half the guys just harassing you while you're hitting a shot. And the quality of golf isn't great, but seeing people wilt under pressure is, one of life's joys, is watching your buddy just, beg you for that 4-footer and you just make him sweat
Oh,
it.
absolutely.
And like I love the chaos.
Yeah.
So I hope 2026 is full of a lot of chaotic golf moments in my golf group.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah, that golf, like primarily people forget that golf is fun, and it can be,
Mhm.
like we've spoken about, it can be fun through the form of playing better golf with that expectation management, but also just sometimes just realizing that it's there as like a hobby and something to enjoy. Like we're not going to make it on the tour. It's okay. Like we can just go and have fun with our friends. So I love that. And with the video series as well, Alex, is that going to be available on the Decade app, or is that also going to be available on YouTube or any of those sort of?
Yeah, I think it'll be a mix. We'll probably release some free content, and then obviously some of it will be in the Decade
Yeah.
app. But we're going to come out with some pretty fun series where the the videos will have kind of like an intertwined theme and be multiple parts.
Mhm.
And I think they'll just be nice, kind of structured ways to learn. And then we'll have some one-off videos where we may be talking about, like Scott made a video talking about Rory's final round at the Masters, stuff like
Yeah.
that. Um, so it'll be a grab bag, but definitely will be amping up the content and the amount that we put out. And like I said, having a little more short form content to really cater to kind of the state of the world
Oh,
and
it's
how we view
crazy.
content.
It's crazy. You got 3 seconds apparently to capture people's
Yeah.
attention nowadays. So I can just about do a breath in 3 seconds before I start talking. So I don't stand much chance, I don't think. But that's all awesome, Alex. What I'll do is I'll make sure to put in the descriptions links to Alex's Instagram. Head over and follow Decade, and also to the Decade app as well for all the listeners to get in
Right.
contact.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on, and I hope we can do it again sometimes. Like, I'm sure you can tell, I get very passionate when I'm talking about golf, and I can talk for hours upon hours. So, thank you if anyone's still watching this late in the podcast. Appreciate you guys watching, and please reach out if you have any questions on your own.
That's awesome, Alex. And I always like a guest who can talk. It makes my job a lot easier. Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.